Hello and welcome to Spotlight Indie. I'm your host, Frasier Armitage, part-time robot, full-time nerd, author of New Yesterday, Time's Ellipse, and A Stitch Between Worlds. And joining me with Kat is H.L. Tinsley. Holly, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yes, I bought the cat tonight because I thought that you could trial run a new co-host. So in a moment, I'm going to step aside and the cat will take over. And she is very vocal, so she will have a lot to say for herself.
I look forward to it. We've got with us Livia J Elliot. How are you doing?
All good, thank you. So I'm a bit more awake than before.
Oh, good. Amazing. We are here this week to prove that there's no such thing as a stupid question. And in order to do that, I'm going to throw the reins over to Holly because Holly has a question for us. And between me and Livia, we're hopefully going to break it down to show that stupidity does not exist when it comes to questions, especially when it comes to writer questions. So, Holly, what is our question this week?
So our question this week was sent in via our Google Forms. It is a question all about first books. So this is a bit of a bigger question. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to break this down over maybe a few episodes with different authors just to get some different perspectives. But the question we were sent was, how do you start and maintain a campaign to launch your first book? So this is obviously something that we all do. It is a huge milestone in an indie author's career. Bringing out that debut novel, getting it out in front of readers and getting it connected with an audience. So tonight, we will be focusing on those first steps, the foundations that you need to lay before you do anything else, before you launch, before you get your cover done. What are the kind of background things that you need to do? And I think this is going to be a great one to talk to Livia about because, as we know, Kickstarters are a great example of something where you have to put in a lot of background work and lay a lot of foundations. So my first question for you both is, when you finish that final draft of your book and you know it is ready to go, what is the first thing you do when your book is finished?
So I'm not going to say take some time and know that's a common advice. I generally cannot. So I will say when you are probably about 80% from the book, book a developmental editor. That's going to make so many improvements. There are things like we can get very into the book and not realize that there are things that are missing there. So after the first draft, that to me is essential to have you're not, probably if it is a first book, you're not going to have a street team, you're not going to have alpha readers. So developmental editor is the best thing that you can do. And they're expensive. So that means that you will need to save before that.
I think for me, the first thing that I did was I ate about a gallon of ice cream. That's the honest, truthful answer. Is you just got to do something to mark the achievement. Because if this is your first book and you're about to begin a launch, you are about to embark on a massive journey of rewrites, a massive journey of putting together the campaign, of getting out there, spreading the word. You need to fuel yourself up, and you need enough to celebrate, and you need to take that time to celebrate what you've done to fuel you for the work that lies ahead. So the first thing you should do is fuel yourself up for what is about to come next, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And echoing that as well is build some resilience, because it's from there, like that's the easiest part, writing the book in comparison to everything that comes after, especially because you may be lucky enough that the first book was in a good state and good enough to be published. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes you cannot publish that book and you need to revisit it like years after, so.
And also, you might be a list maker. I am not. My brain is chaos. So for me, it was a case of, because I know I'm about to go and do something that feels really alien to me and something that I'm not good at, I needed to feel good about having done the book and remembering why all of those things were necessary. So if you excel at Excel, then you are going to love planning a launch. But if you think that spreadsheets are noise, I mean, I love the idea of plotting with spreadsheets. Give it to me all day long. But plotting a launch, that to me just it gives me a headache. So if you're gonna have a headache, start it with ice cream.
It all comes back to ice cream every time on this show.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, there's some really good points there about just fueling yourself up. And I think it's really important to kind of mentally nourish yourself as a writer, because you are in for a long haul. You can't just write a book and then a week later publish it and expect that people will pick it up. There is a lot of, as we say, foundation to lay. So I want to talk a little bit about the research that needs to be done before you start a marketing campaign or a launch for a first book. So looking at pinpointing where your audience is, how to find them, looking at how to find reviewers. How do you approach that as writers, the pair of you, and what research do you do before you launch a book?
Frasier, do you want to go?
I was going to say that what I do now is very different to what I did for my first book.
Yeah.
Because this question is from somebody who's launching a book for the first time. And I feel like the steps that you take are all exploratory. So what I do now is stuff that I know works from trial and error. But what you'll find is that if you're doing this for the first time, you will probably want to explore lots of different things and find out what works for you. So just don't be afraid to reach out and ask. If there are blogs out there that review and you like them and you're aware of them, reach out and ask and say, will you review my book? If you have comp titles that you want to make for your book, but you feel like these comp titles are absolutely like classics of the genre, don't be afraid. Go for it. Use the comp title. Don't be intimidated by what is out there already. It takes a while to learn these things, but I would just say be free to do what you need to do in order to feel confident about the marketing and the stuff that you're going to be doing. But it's really important that when it comes to your research that you are finding your people. So don't neglect that aspect of it and take some time to search for your people on social media, on sites, on platforms like this. Find your people and then approach them and say, hey, want to lift me up? Because you'll probably find 9 times out of 10 people do. What about you, Livia?
It's quite a complex question, but I will say, echoing part of what you said, like finding other people is super important. If you are looking for reviewers, podcasters, booktubers, anything, and this also comes from the experience of being a booktuber, podcaster as well, like do a bit of research into whether they are open and what type of books do they read. Like I have had questions of people that are way outside the genres that I read, and then I had to turn them out, and then they get angry. And I get like 3-4 emails of an angry person. Why won't you read my book? And don't do that. Don't be that person, because that's not how you want to start your writing career. Like take some time, watch their videos, actually watch what they actually like for. You're going to have far more success if you reach out and said like, I watched this video, I saw what you said here, here, and here. I really like that. I think that you will resonate with my book because these things. That will actually go far. It will take you far longer than doing anything else, but it will be also far more successful. And the other thing is, other authors are not your enemies. They are your best allies. Like a lot of authors that are starting, I have seen that they just want to connect with reviewers, and that's it. They don't want to connect with authors. No, authors are going to be there for you. They are going to help you. Like how many times I had like problem with Kindle, went to a couple friends like, this is happening. And they were there like, don't panic, this is the solution. I have already been there. And then I had the opportunity to, help them as well. Like they will come to me, I have the solution. So that's also super important to have that safety network, especially if you can find people that also write within your genre. That's also going, as you said, like we rise by lifting others, and forming that network of writers is going to be always more effective.
Totally. And I think jumping up on that as well, I feel like building those friendships is something that is essential for me, because I have friends now that I know if they write a book, they're going to send it to me so that I can blurb it. And if I write a book, I'm going to send it to them so they can blurb it, so they can give me some feedback and they can say, yeah, I love this, and give me stuff I can use for marketing. I wouldn't have those people if they weren't my friends. And it's
Yeah.
not that you're doing it because they're a friend, but you've built up this friendship through this exchange of things and through being there for one another and helping each other out through the process. So the more author friends you develop, the wider that network becomes, and then the more you can draw from. What tends to happen with authors who are launching their books is that they've written in a bubble for quite a long time. So they might be quite isolated, particularly from other authors. So, step one, just spend a month or two just finding other authors whose stuff you can read, whose stuff, people that you might have, maybe lost touch with, but maybe have met as you've been, going through this process. Just connect with the people, because that's a really big
Yeah.
part of your launch. And that's something that not a lot of places will recommend. They'll recommend that you join a social media and do X amount of tweets and do this and do that and take all these steps. But actually, the people at the end of the day are a really big part of that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even about social networks. Something like Discord communities will actually do very well because you can engage in a more personal way. And echoing that as well, I would say create social media when you start writing, not when you have finished a book. Because after that, after you have the book, if you create the networks there, who cares? Nobody knows you. You have no connections. Like if you start before that, you can start relating to others, talking to others, building up that network so that when you are about to release, you already have some people that care about it and that can support it.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to, again, as well, echo what Livia was saying about when you reach out to reviewers and bloggers, is just to understand that there is an etiquette to it. And it is about laying out, some commitment from yourself as a writer as well, because obviously you're asking people to read your book. And as much as you love it and you want everyone to read it, you're looking at people who have got a very limited amount of time to do what they do, usually for free, with many other authors wanting to take that time as well. So just make sure that when you do look at reviewers, for example, with my first book, I built an Excel spreadsheet and I listed about 100 different reviewers that I found. And I had tabs for whether they were open or whether they were closed, what genres they liked. I put in dates. So if there was something that said, I'll have a window open at this date, so you know that you can contact them then. And just really take that time to appreciate that it takes a lot of time to read and review a book. So as much as we know that you want it, it's asking other people to spend their time on something. And also give lead time as well. If you've got a book coming out in March, don't contact reviewers in February and say, please, can you read my book? Give people that time. So I think that is really, really important.
I want to jump on that as well, Holly, because that's such a good point. But I think the thing that for me is wanting something from somebody but holding no expectation of getting it is really important.
Yeah.
Because it might be that you send it to a reviewer, they read it, and they really don't like it, and that's okay. So you can't expect that the reviewer is going to come through for you by such and such a time. You've just got to trust that there will be some of them that are, but don't go into this with expectations, because it will frustrate you if they are not met. Just go into this with the idea of you're seeking this, and if you get it, great. And if you don't, you followed the steps to try and put yourself in the strongest position possible. So don't get frustrated if people aren't coming back to you and saying, this is a 5-star read, or this is the greatest book in the world. Don't let that stop your momentum. But at the same time, just don't expect that's going to happen,
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about actually understanding your book, because I think this is something that authors don't talk about a lot, because the focus when you're bringing out a first book especially is always on, you know, are the reviewers going to like it? Where can I find my audience? And all that is exceptionally important. But before you can really get into that, you have to understand your book in a very different way, because writing a book and marketing it are two different things. And I know personally, and I'm sure that both of you can relate to this, I've done podcasts where people have said, "Can you give me an elevator pitch for your book?" And I go, I don't know what to say. So what I tend to do now is, if I'm bringing a book out, I will build myself a little package, like a portfolio, where I really get to understand, you know, what can I talk about that's in this book? What are the themes that are in it? What's the elevator pitch? If I had to describe it in 5 words, how would I describe it? You know, I'll pull pictures from different TV shows and computer games to try and build up little aesthetic boards, just so that I myself feel like I really know this book, how it's going to be branded, how it's going to be promoted. Have either of you ever done anything like that?
Yeah, I have, especially because I'm on the camp of I generally do not know how to compare my own books. And that also, I think that also comes because of how I am as a reader. Like if I'm pitched a book as a comparison, I will probably not pick it up because I will assume it's derivative. But that's because of how I am as a reader. I read by curiosity, so that doesn't work for me. And with that, what I mean is that don't try to market your book as everybody else is doing it, because as an author, your marketing style should also fit what you write and the image that you want to create and how you put your work forward. So I will, for example, for both books, especially this one, which is weird stuff. It's not new weird, but it's weird stuff. Like what I will do is list the elements that I think are the most important. Like, is it literary? Does it have, in that case, philosophy? Does it aim for this audience? Does it have green dark elements or things like that, things that you may pull up even if you are not aiming for a comparison book? Then from there, try to find other books that have the same elements, even though they may not have the same type of plot or tropes that your book has in particular. From that, you can craft a list of what people are reading or interests that are similar to those in your books. Perhaps theme work that is similar. It all depends on how you want to market it. And then sometimes things that are funny may go a longer way than something that is just a description, you know. And if your particular audience struggles with an A meets B, you don't have to do that, you know. Like if you're like recently, I read a book that was indie published, but very classic sci-fi. That book is not going to be marketed with an A meets B because that's not the audience for it. You know, so that's something that you need to consider where your audience is, how they consume books or how they get to the books, and then everything you do has to be aligned with that. It's a lot of research work. You have to spend a lot of hours doom scrolling to see what they are doing, but it generally pays off. And even if it pays off, that's the other advice I would like to give. It's like, don't expect immediate results. Sometimes it won't happen. Like sometimes, yeah, you may get lucky. You may explode in like 1 week. Generally, it doesn't happen. Generally, it takes some time to build up. And what I have experienced as well is that the more you get out, the more that people start to find you. So it takes some time to build up.
Yeah, it's not your first launch that's going to make you like the profit.
Yeah.
It's like your 10th launch. It's fine. You're finally going to see it.
Probably. Yeah.
It's a long game. I think for me, going back to this point, Holly, of putting together like a packet for that you can send out about the book, usually those kinds of things will include a really strong blurb, which will have a really strong hook, maybe some comp titles. It will have like an about the author section. It'll have a book cover. It'll have your photo image, all of that kind of stuff. The thing is, you don't need to do a lot of work to put that kind of a document together. What the work, where the work is best targeted is in making those things fantastic. So the first blurb you write for your book is probably not going to be the blurb that ends up on the back cover, and that's okay. Don't view it as a chore. Don't view it as like, yes, I wrote a blurb, it's 150 words, boom, I've done it. You want to experiment with that. You want to throw it out to people. Use social media. See how people react to it. If you've got comp titles, try a few of them together. Then try a few more. Then try a few more. See what lands best with people until you build the perfect comp titles. It's a case of taking the time to be able to experiment through your launch so that by the time that you are ready to release that document, it is as strong as it can be. Because otherwise, what you end up doing is releasing something and then thinking, if I just waited a month, I would have something so much better here. So don't fall into that trap. Don't rush. Take your time. Get it right first time. Measure twice. Cut once.
Yeah, and something to echo on that is that even if you pick up something, you don't have to stick to it. Like, as you find your audience, you may realize that your audience and your readers are talking about your book in a very different way than you, perhaps labeling it as a genre you knew nothing about. And that actually sticks, and then you start using that and it actually works, I have seen a lot of authors that have rebranded themselves after how their audience describe the books, and that really helps. And also, even when you are looking for comparison titles, you cannot read all the books in the world. Sometimes some of your readers will have read the perfect comparison and you had no idea that book existed. And that actually happened to me with Dance With Me. Like, somebody told me one book. I didn't know it when I haven't even heard about it. And then when I read a summary, I was just like, this actually is it. That can happen. And the advice there will be, don't be afraid to leverage that to fine tune your pitch afterwards. You are, like somebody told me once, you are always launching. Like, even after your book is there, you're always launching, because you never know when somebody may find you, and that new reader will have no idea who you are, what your books are about, and you have to pitch that from the scratch. So that's something that I have found to be very wise.
No, I definitely agree with both of those. Just to jump very quickly just back to what Frasier was saying there about the document, just for some clarification, what we're talking about with what Frasier has mentioned, like with the blurb and the cover, that is your promotional package. So what I was referring to is a document or a package that is purely for yourself as an author, for you to use as a reference point. So just to give you an example, when I first brought out We Men of Ash and Shadow, the first Vanguard book, I had a 6-month campaign plan for that book. So, and it went on even longer than that, but initially that's what I had. So that had things like different websites, reviewers, when they were open. It also had things like, what can I talk about on social media? So I had a list of, 20 different topics and subjects that I can pull out that talk about what the book covers and kind of make it interesting and engaging. There were other things on there like, I'm trying to think now what else was on there. It was a huge spreadsheet that was about 10,000 pages long. So, and I just dread to look at it now. But at the time, it was really, really useful because it meant anything that I was doing to do with that book, I could just go and quickly reference point that. Because what is really important to remember is, as much as we love our art and as much as we want our art to be art, once you've written that book and you've put it out, it then becomes a product. And products do need a lot of marketing. There is a lot of work that goes into it. So I'd say start building that reference point for yourself, and start using it to hang on to any ideas that you might have, where you've seen like a marketing campaign another author's done, where you thought, I really like the way that they've done that. That was a really good idea. And then that way you've just kind of got those little fail safes, those little cheat sheets. One thing I'm really interested is to learn how long you both leave it between finishing a book. So let's say you've got to the point where it's been through all of your editing, it is a final draft ready to go. How long do you then leave it before you launch that book into the world?
So for me, it depends on the book, because every single book is going to require a different amount of time and effort, because you're never going to launch a book the same way twice. you're going to want to make it bespoke for that particular story, because that story is going to have a very different reach, maybe to a previous book that you've launched. If you're writing a series, for example, you're going to approach a second book in that series completely different to the first, because you're building upon what you've already done.
Yeah.
So in terms of a book, it's hard to give like an exact figure to say it takes me this amount of time. What I would say is that I always schedule 2 more months than I initially think it's going to take me to build in buffer time. So if I think it's going to take me 6 months, I'll schedule it to be released in 8. And usually that will be a month too soon. So it's basically just build yourself in plenty of extra time. Don't factor things down to the wire, because that's just going to stress you out.
Yeah. I think I have done, and I generally do pretty different things depending where I'm launching. So anything that I launch on the app, I generally follow a different process. Like as soon as it's done, reviewed, polished to the point that we are going to publish it, then we generally agree on a date or something, a date that we believe it's going to be somewhat okay, and then build the campaign from that. Sometimes I have done it like pretty quickly compared to when I finish a book, but that works because it's an app. It's a completely different type of audience. It's not the same as what you are doing with a book. So with the books, I echo what Frasier said. It really depends on the position of a book in your series. If it is a standalone, you can probably do something different compared to second, third book, or even prequels. Like the prequels that you are realizing that you are sending before the series, that also takes a different type of marketing, because that's generally an introduction to a series that you are going to put up out there. It also depends, I will say, on whether you want to have people, for example, pre-ordering your book, or e-arc readers, or if you have alpha readers or anybody that can read it before it's out there. In that case, you will need to factor that in, because that's going to take time. As Holly said, you can't just dump the book into someone like, hey, it's 100, 400 pages here to read for tomorrow. You can't do that. Like, you have to give them some time. You have to set up some expectations. Things may happen as well. So that's something to consider. And also, it depends on how many people is involved in your launch. Like, are you waiting for an artist to do internal work? You may need to account that the life may happen to them, and that may take some time. Do you want to synchronize your paperback with your audiobook? That's a completely different story, especially for if you are publishing an audiobook as an indie. That's a whole other thing, like how you're going to launch it and the control you have in there. So it depends. For example, Genesis, I think I did 4 months after I have done it. Dance with Me, it was pretty different because I already had the book out in interactive format. I only had to novelize it and prepare the campaign. But for the campaign, as I said, I think in one of the other segments, I started in September of 2024 for a pre-launch in April and a campaign starting in May. So that takes a lot of time, especially because there was a lot to build up there. So I will say, be kinder with yourself. And if you have to put the line forward, if you have to move the date to make sure that you have a better launch, do it. But once you have set up a date, don't bring it forward. Like, you're already building hype for one date, don't bring it forward.
So going back in time, in November 2021, I think it was, I released a novelette, which was very short, got out there, boshed it out there, learnt a lot. August 2022, I think, I released Yes Tomorrow, which is a prequel, a prelude to New Yesterday. That's a novella. So I'd already finished writing the book, the novel. I didn't want to make all of the mistakes on launching the novel, so I thought, let's learn from the novelette. I was able to apply that to then the novella and say, did I learn from it? Did I, and then from that point, it wasn't until April 2023 that I actually released New Yesterday, doing all of the things that I learned from the first two. So November 2021 to April 2023, I'd finished New Yesterday before I released that novelette. and I'd spent all of that time releasing other things in the build up to the launch of New Yesterday. So don't think that when you finish the book that this might be, right, I've got to launch this. You might find, like Livia said, that a prequel novella really works to generate interest in your book. That means it's something you've got to write. You might find that there's other like campaign tools that you might want to use, like a short story or like all these other things. Your writing is not finished until the book is out. So there might be, you might think, right, okay, I want X amount of time to launch this book, but you might just want to hold off until the launch for it, you've ironed out all of your mistakes, and it can be as smooth and as successful as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that most probably new writers and even established writers struggle with is patience, and that is a really difficult thing to get past. It's a really difficult thing to learn, but you just need to have that patience, because we've all been there. You know, that excitement of, I've written a book and I love it, I know everyone else is going to love it, I just want to get out there as quick as possible. But if you don't take the time to build up that platform, that foundation, that solid grounding, what you're going to find is you're going to throw your book out there and it's just going to fall through the floor, because you're basically putting out a book amidst the noise of everyone else that is putting out a book. What you really need to do is to, like we say, establish where those audiences are, establish where your reviewers and your bloggers are, and build those relationships. Know your book, know your product inside out, and give yourself enough time. And when you do all those things, you'll find that when you do launch that first book, you're going to have a much stronger basis to do it from. So I want to talk a little bit about the kind of initial promotion and marketing of a first book, and how you put together, and I hate to sound corporate about it, but some branding. So for you both, how important is it for you to have a brand as an author so that people can really understand what they can expect from you?
It's difficult. I think the brand is something that doesn't, or your style is something that it may not come with the first book. Because I have realized that, for example, in Unearthed, I have written like cozy fantasy, sci-fi, near future or far future. I have written coming of age, grimdark, dungeon crawlers, like anything. But when at one point, I started thinking, okay, but they all have a Livia flavor, to put it in some way. What's that flavor that I'm putting in there? And I said, like, these themes actually repeat. They generally speak about the struggle or control or bias, which are the themes that I like the most. There is always a conversation on identity. Okay, if themes are so important to me, that's it. That's how I put my work forward. Because there are readers, there are, I don't know, billions of people in the world. You are going to find your audience. It just takes time, and it takes time to find out that voice in particular. So I will say that even anything that you do, even if you are publishing in different genres, pen names and things for searchability, that's a completely different thing. You still need to have some consistency. Even when you are hopping genres, there is something that makes the books your books, and that's what you need to find. That's what you need to put up. And once you find that, everything that you do has to build up around that idea. Because it basically, at least what I'm aiming is for people to know, like, yeah, with Livia, we can always find this. Doesn't matter the genre, doesn't matter the style, whether it is my podcast, the app, or my books. It's always the same, because that's what I like. And that's how I enjoy the books as well, that I write and that I read. So that type of consistency, I think it will go a long way to help you build an audience,
Totally. My brand of like the whole part-time robot, full-time nerd thing came from basically a desire to save the world from this face. So I was like, when I started out, I was like, I'm just going to draw a line drawing of a robot at a writing desk, because then I can put that on social media. I think that's kind of cool. And also at the same time, it means that I'm sparing the world. I'm saving children. Children do not want this mug being the last thing they see at night, because otherwise it's just nightmare like street for them. So I was like, let's do the world a favor and do that. And it was kind of handy because it meant that I could, for a long time, create this element of mystique about Frasier Armitage. Who is this robot at the writing desk? And at the same time as doing all of that, it's very much sci-fi speculative. You know, you don't look at a picture of a robot at a writing desk and see someone who's pitched themselves as part-time robot, full-time nerd, and then think, I bet they write romance. Like, it's gotta be chick lit. It's gotta be hist fic. No. Like, you know straight away it's gonna have, like, you know, weird sci-fi stuff. So I mean my first a lot of what I've written is time travel related, which is not necessarily robot stuff, but you know, I feel like if you're in the genre you're supposed to be at, and somebody looks at you and says, "Yeah, this is sci-fi," or "Yeah, this is fantasy," or "Yeah, this is horror," you kind of got it. And I'm not a horror writer, hence why this wasn't going out there. So that's the but that was it for me, and it was really good because it meant that, you know, you were back in the early days. I felt comfortable doing it. And I think that's a really thing that maybe we don't get told enough to do. We get told all of the steps to do, but we don't ever get somebody saying like, but only if you're comfortable. Because it's like, there's this thing of, you've got to do this and you've got to do this and these are the steps, and build a brand, but only if you're comfortable building a brand. You know, it's useful, it's handy, but if you don't want to view yourself as a brand, as an author, you know, if you're uncomfortable with that idea, it's not necessary. But there are advantages.
Sorry, go on, Livia.
Yeah, something that I was going to say in there is that if you see some other people doing something, it doesn't mean that it will work for you. You know, because they may have a different audience or they may have a different style. And being genuine, I think it works better than just being a copycat in general. At least for me, I generally write in the same way that I read, or in the same genres with the same style. So trying to come up with, okay, who am I speaking to what's the ideal reader that I will have? I'm trying to come up with that idea, you know, with the characteristics that imaginary person will have. That has worked far better for me as well.
Yeah. And what do you think, Pussycat?
She's come to give her opinion. So I just want to jump a little bit back to talking. Sorry, the cat's really distracted me. I'll edit this bit out. I've lost it. Talking a little bit about brand, because as you know, people will watch more of these episodes, they'll start to realise that, you know, I am probably a lot more mercenary than Frasier is when it comes to things like this. I think we need to stop looking at the term brand as a dirty word when it comes to publishing and being an indie author or being an artist, being creative, because I think when we think of the term brand, we tend to think of it in very corporate terms, and that's not necessarily what we're saying. And absolutely, it is completely right that however you present yourself as an author or as a creative, it should be natural for you, it should be comfortable, it should be authentic, because people can see when you're being disingenuous and it is not your natural personality. But at the same time, it is really important to have that consistency where people who come to you and to look at your work will get that sense of, this is what I'm going to get from this interaction. This is what I'm going to get from picking up this book or buying this particular piece of artwork. And that's not about selling out or being someone that you're not. That is just about really knowing your identity and knowing who you can connect with. Because if you're somebody who is very literary, for example, then be very literary, and you will find people who enjoy that, who connect with it, and you'll find people who don't connect with it, and for that reason will not be your audience. And again, that is a positive in its own way, because then you're not spending that energy in places where, you know, your work isn't going to fit for those people. It's not going to be something that they're going to want. So when we talk about branding, it's not just about understanding what you're presenting, it's about understanding where you fit within the greater context of publishing and the art world. I mean, you look at someone like Banksy, for example. Banksy is based around a brand, and you know, nobody says, well, that's selling out because Banksy is now a brand. all it is simply an identity that they have cultivated that lets people know exactly who they are viewing, exactly who they are engaging with. So don't be afraid of words like branding, because we're not telling you to, be a soulless corporate machine. We're saying find your identity, find where it sits within this platform. So I just really think that distinction is really, really important, because if you don't have that and you don't know where you fit and where your work belongs, you're really going to struggle. Throwing things at the wall and hoping they stick isn't going to work. You've got to get really specific. You've got to really know what you're aiming for. Where are the people that are going to like my book? Who is reading in this niche genre that, that the commercial market would never want? Because when you find them and then you grow that audience, they are going to be so loyal to you. And that's the most amazing thing when you do find that.
Which means that you've got to figure out what you're throwing and where you're aiming. And that's really, really important. And I feel like this idea of a brand is very much connected to authenticity. Like, if you were to meet me in real life, you are going to see that I am the same there as I am here, because this is just me. And Holly knows this from having spent time with me in real life. This is just who I am. So this is it. Like, don't pretend to be an author. Be the author that you are, and that is your brand. So because that helps you to be able to find that spot of the wall that's yours, and to be able to aim for it.
Yeah, and something else is that it doesn't matter how hard you try, part of you is going to leak into your writing. Like, it can be a turn of phrase, it can be an opinion, a theme that is always in your mind. Something is going to leak, whether you want it or not. And people, if you are authentic, if you are you, if that brand truly represents you, that's also going to appear in your socials. And people will see that, will come to the books, will find the same thing, perhaps toned down or perhaps appearing through a character. And that's where the connection comes, where they actually want to see. And it may, as I said before, it may be across genres, across styles. It may be even in a short form work on long form. It doesn't matter, as long as you are consistent between who you are, what you write, and how you present yourself. That's also going to work.
That's awesome. So I want to kind of bring this a little bit full circle now to try and just wrap up this question. It is a huge topic, this as well. So as mentioned before, we will probably break this down a little bit more over further episodes. But just to kind of bring this bit to a close, if I were to say to you, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice or quick tips or kind of actions that somebody who is sitting there right now with their first book ready to go can take to really help them through this kind of process?
I will say that even if it is art to some extent, don't be afraid to be a bit analytical and know what works for you. Like, know thyself. Like, if something isn't working, instead of smashing out the keyboard and going away, ask yourself, is it working because you don't have plot? Because the plot is not refined enough? Because this is not the time of the day in which you actually are awake enough to write? Is something else in there? Is a character so opposed to you that you really cannot write it? Like, knowing what works for you, that will actually make it flow. Like, if you start understanding how you work as a writer, that will help you put up guardrails in there to work in a different way. Like, for example, to make it more concrete, I know that if I get stuck, it is 90% of the time because the plot isn't refined enough for me to write. And that's because I'm a plotter, right? So in that case, if I'm not getting there, I will go back and say, like, okay, what isn't defined here? What do I need to go forward? And sometimes I will go as much as to detail every dialogue bit and then get to write that and polish that. So it really depends, but that it took me like a full year of smashing my head and seeing that it doesn't work to find out what worked for me. Perhaps it's a style or a time of the day. Perhaps you write better in the mornings rather than in the afternoons, and then you can organize everything around that. It may seem small and it may seem tangential, but finding the best way to write, it will reduce the blockers and it will reduce the frustration in turn, and that will make it all more enjoyable.
So my 3 pieces of advice. One is a do, one is a don't, and one is a tip. So do eat as much ice cream as you possibly can through the process. Trust me, you will thank me for it. Don't rush. Do not just think, I want this to be out there, so I'm putting it out there. Do it properly. Don't rush into anything. And my top tip for you is that through the launch phase, work on your next book and keep writing, because the launch phase and the time that it will take for you to launch your book, you will find that if you wait until your book is out to write again, you will be so out of the groove and out of the routine that it will be a real slog trying to get back into your writing routine. Keep your writing routine going and keep your creativity going, and that will also fuel you for all of the extra things as an indie author that you're going to have to learn and that you're going to have to do. So eat ice cream, don't rush, and keep writing.
Yeah. And if I may add something else, is do not expect to recover everything that you invested with the first book. It's not going to happen. Unless you suddenly explode, it's not going to happen. It's like any investment, you have to keep investing. And that means that be wise on whether you want to go for that super expensive cover artist, or if you can get somebody that's cheaper but could actually do something, and with that manage your expenses as well. Like, yes, it's art, but there is a business side to it as well.
So I have 3 pieces of advice, but before I mention those, Frasier, can I just ask you a question? Are you hoping to be sponsored by Carte d'Or? Is this what this ice cream thing is all about?
Oh yeah, absolutely. At some point, some local ice cream manufacturer is going to watch these and go, "We are missing a trick." You know, this is like this. I could keep them in business. You know, it's
you do keep them in business, Frasier.
Yeah. I'm just like, if we can get ice cream in people's stomachs and in people's hearts, then it's just the joy of that. I mean, unless you're lactose intolerant, in which case find your dairy-free appropriate snack.
If there is anyone watching who is a local ice cream manufacturer and you would like to sponsor Frasier, please do let us know in the comments. But to reel us back to the original topic at hand, I would say for anyone that is getting ready to launch their first book, my first piece of advice is to just recognize and understand that this is a long game. So you can put your book out there and you will probably have a flurry of activity for maybe a month, and people will be excited because you're the new kid on the block. After that, it is up to you to sustain that, and that needs to be done perpetually. So this isn't something you can just do over 6 weeks and then think, okay, my book's out, people are going to buy it now. You have to be prepared for the fact that if you want people to pick up your book, you need to be talking about it, you need to be engaging, and you need to do that for as long as you want people to buy this book. So that's my first piece of advice. Well, that's not really advice, that's more of just a general fact. My second piece of advice is please, 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 whatever you do not go onto social media and respond to people's threads or comments or pictures with, "Oh, that's great, by the way, have you seen my new book?" Because there is no faster way to alienate your audience than to go in and hijack other people's conversations about something that is totally unrelated. You will find that there are bloggers out there, reviewers, who consistently post up threads that say, "Have you got a new book coming out? Here's the place to post it. Do you want me to retweet something? Put it in this thread." Make sure you put those things in the appropriate places. Otherwise, you will just annoy a whole lot of people and alienate a lot of readers. And my final tip would be, just have loads of spreadsheets, fall in love with Excel over the next few months, and just keep lists of everything, review sites, websites, bloggers, campaigns that you've seen that you've liked, Kickstarters that you've seen, because you never know. A year from now, you might be in a position where you think, oh, I'm going to run a Kickstarter now. Can I remember that amazing Kickstarter I saw by Livia J Elliot and how she did it? Just a little plug there, but also that is genuine advice as well. It's, you won't remember things that you've seen on social media a year from now, but you might need them. So just keep that little portfolio for yourself.
Yeah, and you only get to be a debut author once. So make the most of this time, enjoy it, because it's not going to come again. You'll have other books launch, but never as a debut. So just, love it. Do what you need to do to love it.
Exactly.
Thank you for taking us through that question, Holly. And thank you, Livia, for your insights. And thank you for allowing me to continue to talk about ice cream on this channel.
I feel like we get a choice about that.
We'll see how much Holly leaves in the edit. Livia, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to have had you with us for these past 3 weeks, and all of the best on your Kickstarter.
Thank you.
Final time, let everybody know where they can find it and where they can find you.
Yeah, but first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time chatting with both of you. And yeah, you can find me as Livia J Elliot on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, my website, liviajelliot.com. If you sign up for the newsletter, you may get one book for the other series that I have, Records of the Orders, for free. My podcast is Books Undone, everywhere where podcasts are, including YouTube. It's long form. It's interesting in my subjective opinion. And yeah, that's all. Thank you for having me.
I trust your subjective opinion, Olivia. It is awesome. Holly, what about you?
So if people want to find me or my books, they can find me on X, Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky. You can also find Spotlight India on all of the same platforms, YouTube, and also our website, www.spotlightindie.co.uk. Thank you so much, Livia. It's been an absolute pleasure. Please do go and back the Kickstarter, everybody. I just cannot emphasize enough how much I loved Dance With Me. It is such a great book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Everybody go back it. Holly, thank you so much for being with me. The reason why Holly has been throwing in some jabs about having different co-hosts is because next time it's going to be Alex who's with me. So we'll be saying goodbye to Holly for a few weeks. So leave your comments below and
just go cry in the corner, I will come back, but I'm just taking a few weeks break, and also I feel like we've really ramped the pressure up on Alex now.
Yeah, I will mourn not seeing that tremendous hair, Holly. I hope Alex comes with the same hair. We will.
Oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for being such an amazing co-host, and thank you to you for joining in and for tuning in and being with us here at Spotlight Indie. Livia, it's been such a pleasure, and we will see you next time on Spotlight Indie.